Hello, my name is Yosef, and today we're going to work on Module G, Description Writing. What are we going to do today? We're going to go through these 4 steps. We're going to start with an overview of the whole test, the planning steps one by one, how to write our ideas, and then how to put it all together in a perfect essay for the G bug root. At the beginning, ask yourself, can you plan and write a descriptive text? Maybe, maybe not. Today's lesson, by the end of today's lesson, you're going to say yes to that question. Can you write texts on subjects of interest, linking sentences with appropriate connectors? We're going to work on connectors today. Can you write descriptions of events, past activities, and personal experiences? That's what you're going to be asked to do in the description writing on the G bug root. So, now we know what to expect. Let's get started. Overview of the G test. Module G has 2 parts. 60 points for the unseen. That's called access to information from written text. And you can watch a different lesson on that. Today we're going to focus on the 40 points, which is written presentation. You're going to write a composition, an essay, a passage, a text. All of those words mean the same idea, that you're going to write 4 paragraphs, your ideas, answering the topic that they give you. When you write, you want to start by planning. You want to be able to organize your thoughts into paragraphs. You can do this even without knowing what the topic is. You understand what the paragraphs are. We're going to talk about what each paragraph should hold and what its role is in your essay. We're going to use connectors as a guide to help us go through the entire essay just the way we should. We're going to know what's expected, what kinds of things they could ask, what kinds of topics might be. We're going to help you sort out your ideas so you pick the right ones to write, and how to add supportive examples to enrich your text. Let's get started. The paragraph structure. You're going to write 4 paragraphs. In the first paragraph, you're going to tell them what you're going to tell them. Introduce the idea. Give them the main idea of what's coming in the text. Paragraphs 2 and 3, the middle, that's the meat of your essay. You're going to give examples and supporting information. This is where, in detail, you tell them all about the subject that you're going to talk about. And in the 4th paragraph, you're going to tell them what you've told them. You're going to wrap it all together, and you're going to give them a conclusion. Based on everything you know, that's what it is. Your conclusion is actually going to be a restatement of your introduction. Your main idea and your conclusion should be the same ideas. Different words, but the same ideas. And those ideas are in fact the ones that you gave details and examples for in your middle 2 paragraphs. Make sense? It will. As we work through this, it'll all come together. Let's look at it in another way. In your first paragraph, you may ask, have you ever thought about whatever topic it is that they're going to give you? It's a catchy way to get your reader's attention. Have you ever thought about giving lessons online? Have you ever thought about the best day of your life? Have you ever thought about some important object? That gets your reader into the idea of what you're going to talk about. Paragraph 2, firstly, let me give you a detail. For example, this is what that detail is all about. Secondly, my second example. In addition, let me enrich that with an example. And finally, let me wrap it all up and tell you about the thing I've just told you about. So you can see that these firstly, secondly, finally give us what we need in the paragraphs. The first example, the second example, and wrap it all together. For example, in addition, those give us our enriching details and supporting ideas. Have you ever thought about? That's introducing the idea. Get them to think about what you're going to write about. So these are the guidelines. That's the paragraph structure that you can use to write your essay, no matter what the topic is. Let's talk a bit about connectors, because firstly, secondly, finally are just one set of examples. Those, in fact, come here under sequence. Firstly, secondly, finally. We have lots of different kinds of connectors. Connectors that can show more of the same. Connectors that can show something different. Contrast is what's different. Or they can show reason. Because of this caused that. Let's go through. If you see on the screen words that you don't know write them down and look them up. If you see words you didn't notice as connectors or you didn't know you could use in this way, make a note of those too. But some of these may be very familiar. I hope also is something that you know also shows us more of the same. In addition, more of the same. Moreover, I could go right through. For example, such as, these are all words that are giving us more of what we just talked about. The connectors of contrast in the second column here, those are all going to show us that something different is going to happen from what was in the sentence before. I thought about this, but then I learned something different. I know you think this is true, however, other people think differently. And you can go through each one of these and show how you can use the sentence to show one thing is different from something else. Unlike is the opposite of like. Just like this, or unlike that, we're showing differences. And these connectors help our readers to understand what's going on. You may also find these helpful to understand when you're doing your reading comprehension. In the unseen, if you've got a connector of contrast, you know somebody's got a different opinion. Connectors of reason also help us to show that one thing caused something else, how these two things are connected to each other. Because you did something, something else happened. Since you got one thing, nothing else has been the same. Due to the fact that we've got to change. So you can use each one of these in a different way to show the reasons that things have happened. Sequence is a little bit trickier. Firstly, obviously has to come first. Secondly comes after that. Finally comes at the end. You could have thirdly, fourthly, and fifthly, but not if you've only got 120 words. You won't have room for more than 4 paragraphs in the essay on the Bagrut. As soon as is related to time. As soon as something happens. As soon as I get out of here, I'm going home. Meanwhile shows that something's happening at the same time. While I'm talking, meanwhile, you're writing down ideas and translations of what I'm saying. In conclusion has to come at the end. That's what you're going to say at the end. You've given me some reasons, and in conclusion, that's the idea. To sum up also comes at the end, like finally. So you've got in conclusion, to sum up, and finally as connectors you can use to begin your last paragraph. The others in this sequence are all going to come in your middle 2 paragraphs. Why wouldn't you want a connector of sequence in your first paragraph? Because that's where you're introducing your idea. There isn't anything to connect it to. So the first paragraph is going to have a catchy phrase, and you're only going to need to connect to the beginning, connect to what came before. So you're not going to open your essay with in conclusion, because you're just at the beginning. You won't start off with however or but, because you're just starting out at the beginning. So you want to start with introducing your idea and then get into the connectors and into your paragraphs. Topics. What could you write about? They could ask you to describe a person, an object, an invention, a dilemma, or an event. Here on the screen you can see different details about each of these different kinds of things. A person you admire or one you'd like to meet, an object that's significant or meaningful to you, an invention that changed the world, improved the quality of life, had some kind of influence on society, or a dilemma, maybe a problem that you solved and how you solved it. Perhaps a medical choice, or maybe an event, maybe a memorable day in your life, or a day that changed the world. There are so many possible topics, but these 5 big ideas are going to cover most of what they could ask. Let's look at how you would take these and put together your ideas. You're going to want to know what the tester is looking for in your essay. Once you've got your 4 paragraphs, you followed along, what are they going to do with it? They're going to read it for these 4 things: content and organization for 8 points, vocabulary for 10 points, language use for 16 points, and mechanics for 6 points. That wraps up to the 40 points that are part 2 of your G-Bug route. They say it has to be 120 words. But in these 40 points, you haven't got a word count. What happens is that the tester reads your essay, grades you on these 4 different elements, and after that's set, then they count the words, and if you haven't reached 120, they start taking off points. But if you followed this 4-paragraph plan and you've used the connectors properly, you probably reached the 120 mark with ease. So what is content and organization? These 8 points answer the questions, did you address all the elements of the topic? We're going to look at a specific topic. You're going to see that in the topics, they sometimes have sub-questions. Tell me about a memorable event in your life. Explain what made it memorable and how your life would be different if it hadn't happened. Well, then you've got 2 different things to answer. You got to make sure that your essay includes those 2 different things. In each topic they give you, they could ask you 1 or more detailed questions, and you're going to want to make sure you address those when you write. Did your examples fit your main idea? I'm going to show you a trick how you can make sure that your examples always fit your main idea. I'll give you a secret, it's writing the middle first. Did you stay on topic? Can your ideas be understood? And is your writing well organized? This is those paragraphs I was talking about. The second area is 10 points. This is very important in your essay, is the vocabulary. Which words did you choose to use? They're first going to look at your variety. Did you use good, strong words? And they're going to look at making sure you didn't repeat the same words again and again. If they ask you for something important and you say, it was essential, that's a great word instead of important. But if you write essential 3 times, well, then you've got repetition, you're going to lose vocabulary points. But if one time you say essential, one time you say important, and another time you say vital, then you've got 3 different good words in your essay. Words you know is another thing, another topic. You want to avoid the wrong word. Sometimes when you're trying to write, you have the perfect word in your native language, and you use the dictionary to try and find the right word. If, when you open the dictionary to that word, you come up with a word you've never seen before, don't use it. The chances are really high you're going to write something that isn't exactly what you meant. If you open the dictionary and you find a word and you go, oh yeah, that's the word I was looking for, great. Use it. You've got the spelling right there. It'll help you. But if you've got the perfect word in your head in your language and you look it up and find a word you've never seen before, find a different way to express that idea, or even a different idea to express, one that has words you know. Register is a fancy way for saying the level of language. When you speak to your teachers, you speak to them differently than when you speak to your friends. You want to keep that in mind. What you're writing here, no matter what they say the topic is, this is formal writing for your Bagrut exam. It's not a letter to your friends. Don't use slang, and don't use things that are catchy for your friends because they're not for the Bagrut. You want to keep formal writing here. Language use is a balancing act. You've gotten into 5 points, so it is assumed that you already know all of these basic structures and can use them accurately. In fact, if you make mistakes in the basic structures, you're going to lose more points than if you're missing advanced structures. Here, in the basics, you want to get them all right. In the advanced, including them, using the present perfect, using the passive, adding conditional if statements, using reported or indirect speech, relative clauses, temporal, verb complements, all of these advanced structures enrich your language and your language use. It's a balancing act. Don't make mistakes in the basic and include at least 5 of these advanced. Find a balance there and you'll get all the points. Mechanics are the things that are not related to your message. Spelling, punctuation. If you're not familiar with all of these dots and marks, quotation marks, exclamation points, and all of those, take a look to review your notes on what they are. Ask your teacher to have somebody explain, because if you don't use them right, you'll lose points. Capitalization. This is something you probably know. If I gave you a quiz on capital letters, you'd get it right. But under the pressure of the test, sometimes you forget to capitalize a name, or you put capital letters in the middle of the sentence. We make mistakes, but that's the kind of thing you can check for yourself afterwards. Paragraphing is also mechanics, and if you follow our plan, you've got the paragraphing down. Now, let's look at the topic. We know how to write the essay. Now we want to know what we should write. On the topic page, and I know you can't see, this is a picture of a real bug root. You can't see it, but I wanted to point out some of the details. We've got at the beginning that it says it's part 2. This is the written presentation. It says that it's question number 9. That's sometimes confusing if we look at it at the beginning, but questions 1 through 8 were the unseen. So this is question 9, even though it's a whole big essay. They say write 120 to 140 words in English. Did they have to tell you to write it in English? Well, I'll bet they did. But there's no penalty for going over 140 words, but there is if you do under 120. So make sure you cross that limit. 4 paragraphs will get you right in that range, 150 max. Then they're going to give you a topic explanation and a little bit more detail. They throw in a little Hebrew word there. That's not supposed to throw you off. It's just supposed to give you a little bit of extra luck. And they tell you to use this page and the next one as a rough draft. That means this space is for you to put all your ideas on, whatever you want. They're not going to grade it. They're not going to look at it. This is the space for your brainstorming. When we come back after break, we're going to talk about brainstorming and about getting your ideas on paper before you organize them, before you start writing. This is the space for that. Here's the topic, and I want you to spend some time during the break thinking about this. A day you will never forget. Your school newspaper has asked readers to write about a day in their lives that they will never forget. Now be careful about the trap, your school newspaper. They want to make it feel like something you might really actually write. But don't let them trick you. This isn't for the school newspaper. Don't do something catchy to get your friends' attention. This is your test. Write a formal essay. That's the topic. Now, write a passage for the newspaper describing such a day and what made it special. So again, your school newspaper has asked readers to write about a day in their lives that they will never forget. Write a passage, not for the newspaper, for your test, describing such a day and what made it special. I'll see you in 10 minutes. In the meantime, start the process thinking about what you're going to write. What day will you never forget? See you soon. Welcome back. I'm Yosef, and we are working on description writing as part of Module G. So far, we've done an overview of the whole test. We looked at the planning steps, and now we're going to get into writing our ideas and then putting it all together. Let's jump right in. Before the break, I gave you this topic. Your school newspaper has asked readers to write about a day in their lives that they will never forget. Write a passage for the newspaper describing such a day and what made it so special. Right here, describing, that's the clue. That tells you you're writing a description essay and not an opinion essay. The two possibilities for any G test are going to be an opinion essay or a description essay. And you'll be able to find the word describe in some form in the topic if it's going to be a description essay. For the opinion essays, there are some other complicated ways. They don't always use the word opinion, but that's the topic for another lesson. A day they will never forget. That's a day in your life you will never forget, something you know a lot about, and you want to describe what made it so special. Describe that day and what made it special. So you've already got here your firstly, describe the day. And your secondly, what made it special. Right here in the topic, they've given you the tools to know what's going to go into your paragraphs. So, what do we do? I start with a brainstorm. What day will I never forget? Well, let me tell you a secret. If you can't remember it now, don't write about it. It obviously wasn't memorable enough. First day of school comes to mind. The day I got my driver's license. The first time I took a plane ride. Maybe the day I got my first bus card. Or maybe the day I visited Yad Vashem with my school class. These are all days that jump up in my mind as days that I will never forget. Once I've got some ideas, then what could I write about each of these? Well, the first day of school, I could write just about anything about school. With Yad Vashem, I could write about how I connected with history that day. I could write about getting my driver's license make me feel like a grown-up, make me feel adult. Or the anxiety I felt for my first plane ride. Maybe the independence of having my own bus card. Maybe the freedom of driving. Maybe meeting my friends on the first day of school. Maybe how sad it was to see some of the history at Yad Vashem. Maybe the adventure of going on a trip. Or maybe the responsibility that I took on now that I had my driver's license. Well, once I've written down a bunch of ideas, then I want to look at this and I want to say, what can I write about most easily? And I look at this just as an overview. I've got 3 different ideas about my driver's license. Maybe that's the one I've got the most to talk about. Maybe I want to talk about some of the others, but I'll be able to tell by looking at what came out of my brainstorm, what's right on the top of my head, what I can come up with examples about easily. So let's take the driver's license. My supporting ideas, my deep examples, my middle 2 paragraphs are going to be about these ideas of responsibility, freedom, and that feeling of adulthood. So my main idea is going to be something that wraps those together. Getting my driver's license was a symbol of freedom and taking on adult responsibilities. That's a nice main idea that includes those 3 supporting ideas. And remember, I need 2 paragraphs of supporting, but I want to introduce them. Remember those 3 paragraphs? Tell them what you're going to tell them in detail, and then tell them what you told them. So if I'm looking for more supporting examples, what comes up in my memory? I've picked 4 pictures that all represent driving or that first day of getting my license that might help me with some ideas for what I want to write in my middle paragraphs. Starting here, this one, I'm looking at it now, it looks a little bit different. It looks a little bit like a video game. Is driving a game? If you've got your license already, just remember it's not a game. Take it seriously. But maybe this is driving through the tunnel. It looks like he's going fast. Maybe I've got something about the feeling of fast. In this picture, can you see that? We have wide open road, lots of places to go. There's some of that idea of freedom. Maybe I like that I don't have to take the bus anymore. Maybe I'm just proud to show people that new license. These pictures may draw different ideas for you. At this stage in your writing, you may not look at this as writing, but I'm going to look at the pictures in my head of what I can write about and what examples are going to fit my essay. We talked earlier about using connectors as a guide. Here on this slide, we're going to look at putting them into sentences. Here's a sentence. I have my license. I drive myself to school. There's no connection between those two sentences, between those two ideas, until I take one of these connectors and put it in that blank. Since I have my license, I drive myself to school. Now I'm showing the cause and effect. I'm showing the reason. Because I have my license, I drive myself to school. It's a richer idea. It's more of a clear description. Due to the fact that I have my license, I drive myself to school. Now I'm giving the mood of something very factual. But in each of these three cases, I fill in a connector to show that having my license had an impact, because now I can drive myself to school. That's an interesting idea, and that's part of my main ideas. So I may want this sentence in my essay. We have more connectors. Let me give you another sentence. How do you like this one? If it comes up, there it is. I have a license. I don't drive my brother to school. Is that because? Because I have my license, I don't drive? No, that's not logical. We've got opposites here. I need something like, although I have my driver's license, I don't drive my brother. I drive myself, but not my brother. Even though I have my license, and even though my parents want me to, I still don't do it. Maybe that fits in with my idea of responsibilities. In spite of the fact that I have my license. Now I'm talking about facts, but each of these is a connector that shows that this is true and this is the opposite. I'm showing contrast with these. So I want to use these connectors to show the feeling, to show the connection, to tie all of my ideas together. I don't want my essay to look like a list of sentences. I'm not going to start a new line with every sentence. I want these things to flow together. I want the reader to see the connections among my ideas. So I'm going to use connectors. This one shows the contrast. Let's review these connectors. Connectors of addition that show more of the same. Also, in addition, moreover. For example, such as, furthermore. Those all show that I'm bringing a sentence that shows more of the same of what was in the previous sentence. Showing opposites, contrast, but, however, even though, in spite of, although, and unlike. Those all show something that's different. One sentence has a different idea than the one that comes after. Reason, showing cause and effect. Because, since, due to, therefore, as a result of, and consequently, all show what happened in the second sentence because of the first. Showing sequence, firstly, secondly, finally, as soon as, meanwhile, at the same time, in conclusion, and to sum up. And remember, in conclusion, to sum up, and finally are all going to go at the end and not in the middle of our essay. When we write, we want to start in the middle. I want to start with my first example. Remember that we were going to write, describe the day. Firstly, the day was cool in the morning. I'm describing the day. As soon as I got up, I felt excited. as soon as, there's one of my connectors. How did I feel? How did this day make me feel? What was it all about? I remember. We need to write something I'll never forget. So I remember means I didn't forget. Getting up for school and feeling anxious. I could have written excited again, but then I'd have excited twice. And I don't want to use the same word twice because I'll lose vocabulary points. I want to use another word that means excited. There are lots of words that mean excited. If you've got words that you know you might want to use, you could look up a few synonyms or other words that have the same meaning before you get into the test. So there I've got in my first 2 sentences how I felt, what the day was like, 3 sentences. For example, I couldn't concentrate in school. That example shows how excited I was. When you're excited, can you concentrate? It's hard. However, so in contrast to the fact that I couldn't study in school, when the time came for the test, I was totally focused. Again, totally focused means the same as concentrate. I've got 2 different ways to say the same thing to show, and I've got my connector showing contrast. I took the responsibility of driving seriously. Now, here I've answered the question, what was the day like? How did I feel? And I introduced my idea of responsibility. That was in my main idea. Let's look at the next paragraph. Remember, from the topic statement, I was able to draw that the first paragraph should be a description of the day and the second should say what made it so special. Let's look at my second paragraph. Secondly, what made it so special was how I felt. I'm connecting to what I wrote in the first paragraph. How did I feel? I was excited. I was nervous. I was anxious. Although, contrast, I believed, I could have written, I felt again. I felt I had done well. But I want to use a different word. I believed I had done well. It was still surprising when she told me I had passed. I could say again, I felt like, but I didn't. I'm just going to jump right into what happened. The license in my hand gave me the freedom to go anywhere. Look at that. The license gave me the freedom. It's kind of a funny phrase. It's the passive. We're using more complicated sentence structures in order to raise the level of a writing. As a result, I also earned the responsibility of driving my brothers to their activities. So I've got freedom and responsibility. So you can see that I've talked about what made this day so special. That excitement, the feeling, the surprise, freedom, and responsibility all wrapped up together. So once I've got those 2 middle ideas, I can write my beginning and my ending to show those ideas, to introduce and wrap it up. Let's look at the opening. Have you ever thought about a day you'll never forget? Here I've got the present perfect. That's an advanced structure. A day you'll never forget. Now they know what I'm going to write about. The day I got my driver's license was an unforgettable step toward adulthood. Now, what's wrapped up in adulthood? That freedom and responsibility, that balance between being able to go and having things I'm supposed to do. That's part of what growing up is all about. So I've introduced the ideas, and in my ending, I want to wrap up the same ideas. Finally, I will never forget the day when I felt like an adult with all the freedom and responsibility of driving a car on my own. I didn't introduce any new ideas. I've got the freedom and the responsibility and the adulthood that I talked about in my earlier paragraphs. I've wrapped them all together. Now you may say, why do I want to say the same thing 3 times? But you do. You want to start with tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them in detail, and then tell them what you told them, because that's the right way to write an essay. When we put it all together, when we feel like we're done, we want to reread our essay and look and see what we've got. Let's look at what we've got here. I've got the present perfect. That's an advanced structure. Have you ever thought about? I can use that opening for any topic at all. Have you ever thought about whatever it is they're asking me to think about? I've got a relative pronoun, when the time came for my test. I have another one here, when the test was successfully completed. Oh, I just noticed that I used the word test twice. Maybe I'll change it. Maybe now I can see that. Maybe I could cross that out and write in one of those places exam or driving test or road test. I can mix it up a little. But what else have I got? I've got the passive voice, when the test was successfully completed. I've also got a temporal clause, as soon as I got up. All of these different advanced structures, the verb complement, I will never forget the day when. These complex structures help us to enrich our writing. So, what else do we have in here? I've got my advanced structures. What else do I want to put? I want connectors. Let's look at all the connectors I've used. Notice that in my first paragraph, I don't really have any. I start with firstly. I've got secondly and finally. For example, however, although. I've even got as a result here. So I've got a lot of connectors that anchor my essay. Firstly, secondly, and finally, those are my paragraphs. I've got my introduction, my two examples, and my wrapping it up. And in the middle, I enrich my ideas with examples. You may think you're finished now. You read your essay, you've included things, but you want to go through one more time and check. What are we checking for? Did you describe what was requested? Sometimes we start writing about something and we get excited about the details and we go off on a different train of thought. So we want to go back and check to make sure we described what was requested. Now's a good time to go back and reread that topic statement. Does your conclusion match your introduction? You saw how I put them on the same screen to make sure I had the same ideas in both. I want to make sure that I don't start with one idea and finish in a different place. Sometimes while we're writing, we convince ourselves. Some people say that getting a driver's license is wonderful, while others say it's too much responsibility for a kid. At the end, kids shouldn't get driver's licenses. Whoa. At the beginning, I said that was the day I'd never forget. It was wonderful. Oops. We want to make sure we didn't make that kind of an oops. Make sure your conclusion matches your introduction. Do your examples support your choice? Is what's in the middle connected to the beginning and the ending? Well, if you followed my plan of writing the middle first, it definitely does. Here's some technical things. Did you start every sentence with a capital letter? You can check this. You know this rule, and while you're excited in writing, you might forget, but you can definitely go back and check. Did every sentence begin with a capital letter? Did every sentence end with a dot? These are some simple things that you can check. Did you use connectors? Go through and count them. Did you use the present perfect? In my opening sentence, if you start with, have you ever thought about, you've got it, but there are lots of opening sentences that you could use to include the present perfect. Do you have some kind of an if statement? That's a conditional. It's another one of the advanced structures. Maybe a relative pronoun. When, who, which, where. These relative pronouns really enrich your writing by giving more information about the subject of a sentence. Now, here's a trick for the 120 words. Count how many words are in your first line and how many completed lines do you have. That'll give you a really good idea of how close you are to 120. Let's look back at the beginning. I said that by the end you'd be able to say yes. Yes, I can plan and write a descriptive text. Can you? I'll bet you can now. Can you write text on a subject of interest, linking sentences with appropriate connectors? Yes, you can. Can you write descriptors of past events, activities, and personal experiences? Yes, you can. Thank you.